Everybody has a different opinion when it comes to decorating for the fall. Some people just like to do fall decorations and leave it up for a couple months, and other people like to make Halloween decorations too. With all of the projects I have today, I'm going to show you how you can do it for either style, either fall or Halloween. Thanks for coming to hang out with me today. If you're new here, my name's Jess. I'm really excited to share these projects with you. I hope you're excited too. Let's get started. The Dollar Tree always has such great wooden pieces that are so easy to decorate for each holiday and season. My Dollar Tree recently got a plus section, and I was really excited to see these larger wooden panels for only $3. So I grabbed one of those. I also went to the Halloween section and grabbed this fun spider wooden cutout. In addition to that, I also grabbed one of the wooden palette leaves that I found at the Dollar Tree as well. All three of my wooden pieces needed some kind of paint or stain applied to them. So I started with the wood panel because I needed to paint both sides of this because I am making a reversible sign. I started with just some white chalk paint, and I started with the inside. I made sure I got the whole center, the outside of the frame, and then the back as well. Then I moved on to the wood palette leaf. I'm using the Antique Wax by Waverly, and I always like to use a baby wipe to apply this because it does two steps at once. It puts on the wax and it also takes off the excess. I do like to wear gloves when I do this because sometimes I feel like the antique wax leaves just a bit of stain on my hands. Then with the remaining wax that I had in my bowl, I added a bit of black chalk paint to that to darken up the stain color. And again, I applied that to the spider web cut out, and it was easier to use the baby wipe on this as well because it helped me get inside the little cutouts a bit better. After the wax had dried on my leaf, I grabbed a piece of scrapbook paper from my stash. I had already used this paper on something else. And there are two sections of this palette leaf that have holes at the bottom, so those are the ones that I chose to apply my scrapbook paper to. This was really simple because these two sections have a really easy shape to trace and cut out. I just laid the palette on top of my scrapbook paper, traced around one section with a pencil, and then used my scissors to cut it out. And I only did that on two of the palettes of the leaf. Once I had both pieces cut out, then I'm using my art glitter glue. This is my favorite paper crafting glue. I'm just applying a small amount to the back, and then I was able to lay it right over the top of the leaf on each section. You could use something like Mod Podge here. I just didn't feel the need to because I don't need the edges sealed down or anything like that. I just needed it to be adhered to the leaf, but I didn't want to use hot glue because there was a chance you would see the bubbles from the hot glue through the paper. I wanted to glue my leaf down to the center of this wooden frame, but I felt like it was just a bit too plain. So I have these miter shears in my craft room that come in really handy, and I took those and I was able to switch the angle of the shears so that it mimicked the angle that's in the corner of the frame. I believe that's a 45-degree angle. And just using some regular size craft sticks here, these aren't the popsicle stick size, these are the ones that are just a little bit bigger than that. I think they're more like the tongue depressor size sticks. I cut a piece using my miter shears so that it would have the 45-degree angle on it. And once I had 8 sticks cut with a 45-degree angle, then I moved to my paper trimmer, which is my favorite way to cut my craft sticks, and I cut each of the sticks down to 3 inches. I just wanted a little decoration for each corner of my frame. Once I had the craft sticks cut down to the length that I like, then I went back to my frame and I was able to lay them in each corner. And because this is wood on wood and I do use the Gorilla Glue sticks, I was able to just use hot glue to make sure that all of my sticks were fastened to each corner. To finish this side of my wood panel, I just applied some hot glue to the back side of the palette leaf and set it down in the center. It's nice that those wooden strips run along the back because I could apply the glue there, and it also helped lift the leaf up off the surface a bit, which created a shadow, and that's a look that I really like. Now for the back side, I kept it simple. I kept debating whether I should do some kind of texture on the back or some dry brushing, but in the end, I really liked the contrast between the black spider web and the white background. So I just applied some hot glue to the back side of my spider cutout and applied it right to the center of my sign. Wooden pumpkins from the Dollar Tree are such an easy way to make signs for fall and Halloween. Now I have 2 in my stash, so I'm going to make 2 separate signs, but if you only have one, don't worry, you can just make this reversible. I'm starting by giving each of my pumpkins a coat of white chalk paint. For the first pumpkin, I'm only painting about 2/3 down because I'm going to be covering the bottom third with something else, and for the second pumpkin, I'm going to paint the whole thing white. For my Halloween pumpkin, I'm also going to use this wood palette bat that I got at the Dollar Tree. You can see there's a small hole on the top. I just filled that in with a bit of hot glue, and I gave 1 coat of black chalk paint to the entire surface of my bat. I found this pack of wooden words at Hobby Lobby. They listed it as plate decor. I'm not even sure what that means. I guess if you're having a dinner party, you can lay it across the plate. But it's painted a really pretty copper color, and there are 2 different words in the pack. One is blessed, one is thankful, and I thought this would be really pretty on my fall pumpkin. In addition to that, I'm going to use some of this vinyl paper from the Dollar Tree. Even if you don't have a Cricut, make sure you check out some of their vinyl products because you can use them without a Cricut. To get started, I laid my pumpkin down on my cutting mat so that I would have a nice even surface to work with, and I cut a piece of that vinyl paper down to fit across my pumpkin and wide enough so that it would fit over the bottom third of my pumpkin. Then I just peeled off the backer, and using my grid mat, I lined the paper up on each side of my pumpkin, and I stuck the paper down to the bottom. Once I had it in place, I then flipped it over and I used my craft knife to cut off the excess. Back on the front side of my pumpkin, I'm just adding some hot glue to the back side of one of those wooden words. I chose the word blessed, and I added it to the center of my pumpkin. I kind of centered the word over the vinyl paper and the pumpkin itself, so some of that buffalo plaid would run through the center. Let me know in the comments if you're still a fan of buffalo check. I still love it. I know some people are kind of over it at this point, but I really like using it in my decor still. Next, I created a simple bow for the top of my pumpkin. I took out some of burlap ribbon that I had in my stash. I just made 2 loops about the same size, and then I cut another piece to act as the tails. I cinched it all together in the middle and tied it with some jute cord, and then I fanned out the loops to create a double bow. I also had some of this wired berry garland in my stash, so I took a long length of it and wrapped it around something that I had in my craft room so that it created a corkscrew. Then, because this is wired, I was able to just wrap this right around the top of the pumpkin to secure it in place. Once I had those corkscrews fanned out a bit, then I took the little burlap bow that I had created and I just hot glued it down over top of the corkscrews. On my spooky pumpkin, I wanted to add a little more texture, so I'm using some gray chalk paint here and a chalk brush. I'm doing a dry brush technique. I just added a small amount of paint to my brush and dabbed most of the excess off, and then I dry brushed around the edges. I also used the ridges at the bottom of the pumpkin as a guide so that I could run my brush up to the top to create the curve of the pumpkin. I really liked how my bat came out with just the black chalk paint, but I felt like it needed a little more decoration. So I'm using this white marker from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just adding some stitch lines all around the outside edge of my bat. Because this was a palette style wooden bat, there was a piece of wood that ran along the back side, which made it really easy to glue down to the center of my pumpkin. I just added some hot glue to that piece of wood and laid it down in the center. Then I dug around in my Halloween stash, and I had a bag of these plastic spiders that I thought were really cute. So I laid them out how I like them on my pumpkin, and I just used some hot glue to attach them on the pumpkin and on the bat and on the stem as well. Sometimes the Dollar Tree has decor that I love so much I don't want to do anything to it. And that was the case with this black tray that I found in the plus section for only $5. I love the cat on it. I love all of the different fonts. I think it's such a great tray for Halloween. But I wanted to be able to use it for other holidays and seasons like fall. So I'm going to create an insert for the bottom of the tray so that I can switch it out. For the fall one, I'm going to use some contact paper. This isn't a marble pattern, and I think I got it from the Dollar Tree, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm also going to use a pack of the window clings that I did get at the Dollar Tree. They've had some really cute designs this year. And I'm also going to use one of the flexible cutting mats. This is a 2-pack that you can get at the Dollar Tree, and you can use it for so many other things other than just cutting. The pack of chopping mats that I had are see-through, but I have seen them in different colors. It really doesn't matter because you're going to cover it up anyway. I started by laying my tray down on top of the chopping mat. It just barely fit. I did have to lay it at an angle, but I was able to get the whole bottom of the tray on the mat. And then I used this Sharpie to trace around the base. These mats are thin enough that you can just cut them out with regular scissors. Now, one tip I have is as you're cutting along the Sharpie line that you created, make sure you're staying towards the inside of the line because there was a slight gap between the bottom of the tray and where I traced, and because the Sharpie line itself is a little bit thicker, I knew if I cut on the outside of the line, it would be too big for the inside of my tray. Once I had the whole thing cut out, then I started laying it down in my tray just to see where I might need to take off a few more pieces. If you lay your mat inside the tray and it starts to buckle, look for where it's buckling at, and that's usually where you need to trim off a bit of the excess. It also helps too if you take a closer look at the perimeter where you cut, and you can kind of see where there are points that maybe you cut at a bit of an angle rather than rounding it. It just took a few times of laying it in my tray and seeing where I needed to snip off a few pieces here or there. And don't worry, it's not going to be perfect, but in the end, it's going to look great anyway. Next, I cut a piece of the contact paper slightly larger than the pattern that I had cut out with my chopping mat. You can see my paper, the roll got a little wrinkled, but it was okay. I was able to smooth it out pretty well. And because it is a marble pattern, if there was a little wrinkle here or there, it kind of blended into the pattern anyway. I found it to be easier to fold my chopping mat a little bit, lay it down in the center, and then move out to the edges. Now, because of the texture of this chopping mat, and I don't think this was a permanent contact paper, I was able to lift it up and start working out some of the wrinkles moving from the center to either side. Now, another tip I have for you, if you think you're going to create something like this and you want to create different inserts for the different holidays, before you get this covered with contact paper, I would take that piece of chopping mat that you had cut down to fit to the inside, and I would trace it on maybe cardboard or poster board, and then that way, as the different holidays and seasons come, you can just pull out your pattern to create another chopping mat. You don't have to worry about retracing the bottom of your tray every time you want to create a new one. After I had my contact paper nice and smoothed out, then I went through and I started cutting off some of the excess, particularly in the corners. I rounded them out and I wanted to make sure there was no more than an inch border the whole way around. Once I had that cut out, then I went through and I just started cutting tabs all along the outside of my pattern. I started from one end and I would cut maybe 8 or 10 tabs about a half an inch to an inch wide, and I would just start pulling them down and sticking them to the backside of the chopping mat. The reason for this is because it is on a curve. You want to make sure that as you're pulling the tabs down that they lay flat against the curve. So if you feel like you're seeing a little bubble or buckle when you try to pull the tab down, that just means that your tab's a little bit too wide. So just cut it in half and make sure as you continue the whole way around, you're cutting the tabs narrow enough that you can wrap them around the edge without having any bubbles. I think this marble contact paper is so pretty on its own. After I had the insert all covered, I laid it in the tray and it looks so nice just by itself. So I may go back through and create one with just the contact paper. But I really wanted this one to be for fall, so I grabbed some of those window clings and I laid them out how I like them. And you can see when I do something like this, I always like to take a picture of it after I have it laid out before I actually stick it down permanently. Because I am using, I think, about 6 different window clings here, so I wanted to make sure that I repeated the same pattern. I like to use Mod Podge when I'm sticking down window clings to different things. It's really easy to spread with a foam brush and it dries clear. For this one, I'm only applying it to the back side of my window clings, so it really doesn't matter what finish you have on the Mod Podge. I think this one's a gloss, but you could use matte too because I did not apply it over the top of my window clings. I just used it on the back side to make sure that it would stick nice to the contact paper. And I do have my phone laid off to the side so that I could reference the picture I took so I knew which pumpkins I needed to place where. There are so many different types of contact paper and window clings available now that this is such a great way to customize things to your style, and I'm really excited to get started on making some more inserts for the different holidays. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. Let me know in the comments if you like to decorate for fall and Halloween or just fall. All right, everyone, I hope you have a great week and I'll talk to you in the next one.